Hello, everyone, and welcome to something a little different. So, a couple days ago, I put up a Google form, and I asked y'all to ask me some questions. So today we're going to do Q&A. I'm Pandan, and I figured we'd do some Q&A over the Vision Quest soundtrack. This track is actually a collaboration by myself and Reliable Chair, and it's called Begin Quest. So let's pop over to the sound room. We have 21 questions. Can't believe it. That many people cared. A lot of them are repeats, but it's quite humorous. Some of them are jokes, so this should go pretty quickly. Let's see. So I'm just finding a dev version here. All right. Okay, here we go. Let's groove and move. Anonymous asks, how do I give Troubadour 7 move? So that's just a very simple fix. If you're using Heavy Builder and you go into the class editor, you see there's a movement option under the stats of the unit. If you go to the Troubadour class, you can go there and you can just increase that value to 7, and they should now have 7 movement. I hope that helps. It's a funny one. It's a funny joke. Let's see. Random Wizard asks, what would you say your favorite parts were of working on the project as a whole? Moments you remember particularly liking, or sections of the work that you particularly enjoyed? Oh man. That's a good question. There's been definitely ups and downs with working on the project. I mean, now that we're getting kind of close to finishing up, I would say that it's crazy to look back 2 years ago and see kind of where I started when I didn't really know anything and I just kind of wanted to try something out. As far as my favorite parts go, man, I mean, I've always liked chapter creation and map making. I very distinctly remember the rush of excitement when I finished the first outline of the original 12 chapters. I was like, yes, this is it. This is the idea. And that was really exciting. I think in general, it's always really nice when you see that idea come to life in some way. So when I've, for example, built a chapter for the first time and I see it and it plays really well and I'm like, yes, I nailed this idea. That's always really exciting. There were some parts of the writing that definitely gave me the feels at different points too, that was always really validating as a creator to see even myself as someone who wrote something months or a year ago, now seeing it in game, and I'm just oh wow. The first time I saw the end credits when I played, that definitely hit me. I was like, wow, I finished it, it's done. It's so weird. So those are some of my favorite parts. And kind of on a more meta level, just the team that's come together around the project has been really, really great. And it's hard to imagine getting this quality of a product without them. And just it's been really fun kind of building this coalition over time. That's helped put the project together. So those would be some of the best parts there. I need to fix that loop, by the way, in the last song. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I liked a lot of it. Warpath asks, which VQ character do you see the most of yourself in, and why? This is a tough question. I would argue that there's a little bit of me in a couple of different characters. I mean, I definitely relate to the Galus as an older brother type of character. I have a younger sister, and so when Vigalus is very concerned for his sister's well-being and his family in general, kind of stepping up into that role as a primary caretaker, I definitely can relate to that on some level. Obviously, my life has not been nearly as hard as Vigalus's. My dad's around, my mom's around, they're great, but I relate to how he but I relate to that, but I also relate to his sort of general outlook. You just kind of have to do your shit and get through it. And that part of Vigalis, I think, really always resonated with me. And one of the things I liked about his character was just like the idea of this sort of like guy who like assumes this role. He's kind of drawn a tough lot in life, and he just has like a really strong attitude and mentality that helps him get through it. And you see it throughout the story where like Storch is kind of like freaking out about stuff, and Vigalis is like, I'm doing what needs to get done. Do your job. Like, it'll be fine. Focus on what you can control. And I always have to remind myself of that too when I start to like panic about things that are outside of my control. Other characters, let's see. I'm trying to like think through them. Vigalis is certainly the first that comes to mind. I feel like I need to like look at the character list right now, just to see who comes. Like, just like something to jog my memory here. Let's see. Oh, definitely Kier. I think Kier, one, because I think he's probably like, of all the characters, probably is the closest to actually looking like me, and maybe I'm flattering myself by saying that. I would argue, yeah, probably he looks the closest to me. Minus the beard. I don't have a beard or big shoulders, but I do wear a lot of teal. With Kier, it's like he also is kind of like in this position where he's like, he's talented and he knows he can go far in his career in the military if he so chooses to. Like, he has like a certain seriousness about his work, but he has a certain life change that happens, and it kind of puts things into perspective for him. And it's interesting because like there wasn't really something that would have resonated with me when I started, but over the past 2 years, I've personally had a lot of life changes. Like, I moved to the West Coast from New York, where I grew up. I, got into a serious relationship and got married kind of through the course of that time period. Gotten a new job, switched jobs twice, in fact, over that 2-year span. So it's been a pretty, like, the place I'm in now is very different from the place I was in when I started this at, like, the end of 2017. And Vision Quest is kind of like one of the last real remnants of my life before that I'm still pretty actively engaged with. Like, yeah, I still talk to my friends and stuff like that. But as far as like my day-to-day life, Vision Quest has been like that one sort of steady thing that's been with me through this period. And so like when it comes to Kier, I think with him, like, so much of his character is like, he does his job. At first he did it for himself, and now he really does it for his wife and for, his soon-to-be child. And it kind of just like puts things into perspective for him, where it's like, I'm less concerned with climbing the ranks and being the best I can be in this job for the sake of getting somewhere with it, but really doing the best I can for the sake of my family and like being like the best I can be, like looking inward more. And that's something that like I've definitely kind of started to do. Like, getting into like a serious relationship has definitely changed my perspective on work and how much I work and like the type of career and job I want to have going forward. And so I definitely relate to Kier on that front. And so that was pretty big for me. I really like his character too. Like, Kier is like someone who like I would aspire to like be when I'm older. Because he is a bit older than me. Let's see. Those are probably the top two that come to mind. If I had to pick two characters who I feel like I'm the most similar to, it would be those two. I don't really think I'm much like Storch at all, and that was very much intentional. I don't really think I'm much like Titus or Waluyo either. I thought it would be more fun to explore characters who are less like me as lords, because I think it's easier to show them as like being flawed, which I think is something that Fire Emblem doesn't do enough with their protagonists. But that's a different question. So Warpath, I hope that kind of helps give you some perspective on kind of who I see as the two characters I relate to most. Let's see. This is from Runa. Hello, Pandan. The Runa of Runa does a thing, and last Heavenly Throne fame here. Since you've said that you're only a bunch of supports and some playtesting away being done with Vision Quest, I was wondering what your plans are once Vision Quest is done. Are you planning on staying within the community, working on Vision Quest or something else, or are you just going to yeet on out and dab on us with a fully complete hack? Also, next time tell me Katut already has an A support before you make me right when Runa's been helping me with supports, and I forgot to tell her that she could, that one, of course the one that Runa picked was one that the character already had an A support, so there was less for them to do on that, so my apologies, extra work, we'll figure it out. But what am I going to do after Vision Quest? I have a couple of things. I mean, I definitely think I'll still be around. Like, I enjoy being part of FEU and ROM hacking, and I enjoy, like, helping other people with their hacks. I suspect that, like, I'll probably... I guess there's a couple of things. I mean, one, like, whenever the release happens, so let's change up the music here. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. No, stop it. Okay. So when the release happens, whenever that time is, I'm not going to commit to like a hard due date. Oh, that's a little too tinny right now. Yeah, let's do this one. This track is so intense, it's hard to focus. Okay. After I drop version 1 of Vision Quest, which will be all the chapters, all the writing, all the supports, complete game end to end with as few bugs as possible, the next step will probably be rebalancing it. And by rebalancing it, I don't mean, like, redoing the whole thing. But it'll be much more a question of, like, what's the feedback, who needs a buff, who needs a nerf, tweaking the numbers here and there, adding items in different places, you know, just kind of getting the general feedback. Because I have a feeling... I don't think, like, the game's going to explode in popularity. Like, I think Vision Quest is good, and I think it can be, you know, it can stand on its own two legs pretty comfortably. I don't think it's going to attract as many players as maybe other games will. So I'm curious, like, what kind of, like... But I know there will be an uptick once I am putting complete hack in my thread. So I suspect I'll have a lot of feedback on, like, balancing and things like that. Especially, like, for hard mode. I'll probably need to beef up hard mode at some point. So that'll be the first thing. There's also some other secret work going on in the background for, like, a remastered version of Vision Quest that Pikmin1211 is helping me with. And by helping me with, I mean he's really doing all of the work because he wanted to. Thank him. Thankfully. And so there's some other game modes I want to add and just like some other like quality of life fixes I want to make. There are some limitations that I've run into just kind of because I started the Hacking Builder 3 years ago versus what's available now. And that's a little bit harder for me to roll back without making significant losses in progress. So something that we're like thinking about is like, all right, if we were to just like port this to a build file, what else could we do that we can't do that we wanted to do? And then that could kind of be like the final like V2 release. And so that's kind of what the vision is, at least in the near term. After that, I've had, you know, I've been kind of teasing this idea of a sequel, and I really would like to pursue it. I'd have a pretty good idea. I'm like generally sold on the idea. I'm not like 100% sold on it. The hard part right now is like, I want to do something very gameplay oriented, but I'm struggling to find, and I know I'm struggling to find the story that I want to use for the gameplay. So I'm thinking about like challenging myself to like take a very different sort of approach. Like, as I've been working on Vision Quest, there are certain things that I committed to super heavily in it that I kind of wish I didn't do from both the mechanics and a like writing standpoint. Like, I definitely like leaned really heavily into like an ensemble cast, which kind of led to like some unevenness, a lot of extra writing that needed to be done. I committed to skills. I didn't balance around like capture or fatigue or these other things that weren't really available when I started. And so it's hard to go back and add those in without like doing some other reworks. That would have been a lot of work at the stage in development and it would have made it a very different game. So I have some ideas for like gameplay wise what I want to do for VQ2, like capture, fatigue. I just want to like really experiment with some of these features that like some people are scared of and try to make it fun and interesting while also telling a compelling story. But I think I'll be like a much more stripped down story and just kind of keep it on the basics and really focus on gameplay. The other major element that I need to figure out how to do would be figuring out how to do like a tiering Saga Start party split where you can pick which units go with each lord, and then you kind of get the route split, and then you get to complete each side of it. So it's similar to like Part 4 of Radiant Dawn where you make your parties. I really want to be able to do that in GBA. So that might be something I dive into, like figuring out on the technical side, if I can figure it out. I'm sure I could if I try hard enough. But those are some of my plans for after. I mean, we'll see what happens from there. I mean, I definitely want to keep being around and playtesting hacks and stuff, and record as much as I can for FE3, at least this next year. And then we'll kind of evaluate from there. Like I said, life is changing. I don't know what my availability is going to look like going forward. Kind of once everything kind of settles down here and my wife moves in, what that all is going to look like for me in terms of my free time and what I'll be able to do to support the community. But hopefully I'll be around. I don't intend on like vanishing in like a puff because I finished my hack. No mic drop. I hope that answers your question, Runa. I know that was a pretty meandering answer. I feel like I need to do a different track for each answer. My god. Alright. There we go. Crew ball. Graded Shtick asks, least favorite part of making the hack? Probably like formatting text. When I originally wrote the script, I wrote it when I was commuting on the subway on my phone in drafts of an email, and it wasn't formatted when I was typing it because it would have been just like a pain in the ass to do all that on a phone. So manually formatting all the text that's in the game for the main story, like literally everything had to be reformatted to be inserted, and all of it was like kind of written poorly because it was on a phone, so there's bad autocorrects and stuff. Like doing the text insertion was probably like the most consistently painful part of the hack. It was very tedious. So that was probably my least favorite part. I mean, when I first started and I had to make all the concept art, and I just like wanted to get like some really like quick and dirty splices in the game, that was just a process. That was really a grind to do. Sometimes it was fun, but most of the time that was like art I've generally struggled with. Like my sprites don't look that great. I remember just seeing comments during the first FE3 in 2018 that I showed up at, and people were like, what the hell is Storge's face doing? So we've come a long way, but I would probably say those two are my least favorite parts of making the hack. Let's see. Oh, I like this one. This is so triumphant. Let's see. Leslie asks, what's the best type of cheese? Manchego. Love Manchego. Favorite cheese. It's a Spanish cheese. I really like it on crackers. It's fantastic. I don't know how great it is for melting. It's really just kind of like a firmer cheese that you just like eat with crackers and some wine. That's the move. Honeydew asks, how many chickens would it take to kill an elephant? Dude, I don't know. They'd have to be really incensed chickens, because elephants are big, man. They're big things. Have you ever seen that? They're crazy. Cashew asks, what is your stance on magic 1-2 range bows? No. Definitely not. 1-2. I'm not gonna go on a tirade about 1-2 range bows, but nothing. If you're a ROM hacker and you're doing 1-2 range bows, there's nothing that makes you look sillier than 1-2 range bows, in my opinion. Everyone tries to do it. I have a whole video where I talk about archers largely to address this problem. Don't make 1-2 range bows. Even if it's magic, it's not needed. Archers need to have better range, not close range. That's it. Laurent asks, who's the best character and why is it S-Sphere? So, S-Sphere I would say is probably one of the more interesting characters. She's got a lot going on. I think S-Sphere's the best. I think S-Sphere's a really good. I wouldn't say she's the best. Actually, is she the best character? I think S-Sphere's a really important character. I think she's probably one of the most... I don't know if she's necessarily the best, but she certainly has, like, the most depth to her. I think, at least of, like, the main cast. I think only, like, Titus, like, rivals her in terms of, like, depth. But, I don't know, S-Sphere's just, like, she just knows a lot of shit. She's had a tough life, she's made it work, and she knows a lot, and she's nice to people. What's not to like about someone like that? Laurent asks, when will I get paid? I'm sorry. Soldier number 12 asks, what happened to Dorcas? I don't know, dude. His speed growth got borked to heck. Who decided that? Who made that design choice? The voice of reason says, stop adding new characters. Well, I can't, because I hit the 62 unit limit. It's a hard limit. I can't do any more. We had to frickin' hack the game even more to allow that all at once. So we can't anymore. And I hope all of them... I like all of them. I like most of them. There's some characters, so I'm like, I probably shouldn't have made this one. Whatever. T-Dawes asks, Vision Quest has 62 characters. Oh, great segue. Many of which were added super late into development. This is true. What process do you have when designing a unit, both in personality and gameplay function? What inspires you when designing a unit? Oh, I like this question. It depends. Like, when I started the hack, I was thinking, like, what would a cool starting squad be? And, like, I was really bought into this idea of, like, this inverse branching promotion. So, like, an axe guy who promotes to a hero, a bow guy who promotes to a warrior, etc., etc. And I was like, well, it'd be kind of like a fun way to introduce that. And also, like, me playing with classes that I like. And so I was very excited about Arcadia and Vigalis as, like, units. And also, it kind of worked because the story was very much about just, like, a bunch of village kids being, like, thrown into uncertainty with those danged high taxes and just corruption. So, it's, you know, sometimes it's about gameplay, sometimes it's about story. Sometimes, like, story informs the gameplay. Like, I kind of knew, like, high level, like, story-wise what I wanted up front. And that made it easier for me to figure out, all right, like, this is the Lord, he's going to be a sword guy. He's going to be, like, mentored by, like, this sort of, like, jack-of-all-trades, like, thief lady who's, like, not really a thief, but she's just very, like, dexterous, I suppose. And, you know, Vigalis and Arcadia are kind of, like, you know, what are occupations that, like, village people have? Oh, hunters, like Vigalis with a bow. Arcadia's a woodcutter, so he uses an axe. But he's not, like, a big axe guy, he's, like, a faster axe guy. And then, like, Lara's, like, studying magic because her mom cares about her and stuff. And so, like, some of those early characters were very much, like, story-informing gameplay. As it went on, and, like, there were waves of new characters added from, like, the initial group. And part of it came from playing and realizing that actually, like, the amount of units I give the player is not enough up front if they want to be able to more comfortably Iron Man this game. And so it became a little bit more about figuring out what the gaps were and, like, what would be interesting. And sometimes it, like, the inspiration could have, like, come from anywhere. It could really have come from anywhere. Like, I could give you some examples, actually. So, like, here's a good one. So, yeah, let's talk about what's his name? Who was kind of like a late ad? Gunner. So Gunner's the for those of you who don't know, Gunner's a mercenary you get in chapter 1-7. Gunner wasn't always in the game. He was added in the most recent public release, VO6 or 7. And I kind of felt like, you know, it'd be cool. Like, I didn't have, like, any, like, male sword mercenaries in the game. And I kind of felt it'd be cool to have, like, this foil to Storch. And I also wanted to, like, do something that was, like, kind of trippy and weird. And I just kind of came up with the concept for this character. I was really interested, like, from a gameplay perspective in kind of, like, mimicking the Dread Fighters from Gaiden. And so I was like, what if we had, like, a magic or, like, a res-oriented mercenary who, like, is really good on player phase because he has good hit with heavy weapons and decent, like, offensive parameters, but, like, poor luck, poor defense, but good res. Like, that's kind of different. That's a, like, good twist on, like, an Agma archetype. So there's that. Sarka, I thought... So Sarka's the paladin you get in 111, so right before, like, the finale of part 1. And she got added in later into development because I felt like I really wanted to try making... Actually, you know, I'll give full credit where credit's due. I watched Mecha's video on Isadora, and how Isadora is like a really interesting unit, but she's just in a game that doesn't really suit her because it's so enemy phase oriented. And I was thinking about this, I was like, well, what if Isadora was in a game that was better suited to her? And like, I felt Vision Quest might have been a better scenario for a unit like that. So I was like, what if I kind of like made Isadora in Vision Quest? So a more player phase oriented game where you could take advantage of these strengths that Isadora had. And so that's kind of where like this idea for Sarka came up as like the sort of like early mid-game pre-promote that, you know, gets weighed down by a lot of things, but like has good ranks and like high speed, just like a high speed, low strength paladin with good ranks in the mid game. That's like immediately useful out of the gate. Like basically, it's like the question being like, how do I make Isadora useful in a different context? So that's kind of where that came from. Odily, the second thief you get, that literally came from Bloopy playing and having S-Sphere die and then not being able to make any money. So I'm like, all right, we need to give a second thief. But she'll have better growths. So it's like stuff like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that like really stands out as like unique or interesting. A lot of the time it's just like a matter of fleshing out the cast in a different way. Building in more units that I like, or just like different stat spreads that I think could be interesting to play with. Finding ways to like juxtapose other units with like slightly different variants of them. So that's kind of what happens there. As far as like some of the ones that have been added most recently, because a lot of them are more superfluous, it's been a little bit more about like what are some extra classes that like I feel like we need a little bit more representation of, and what would just kind of be fun to try and do. Like Cashew is a new archer who you're gonna get in the earlier part of the game, like early in part 2, and he's basically like a res archer. There's no archers in the game with good res, so he kind of has that niche going for him, and he's the only unpromoted male archer, so he's got that sort of uniqueness about him. So it's always just like little things like that, I would say. I hope that's helpful to you guys. I guess like on a personality side, that's a better question. It really varies. Sometimes, you know, I just like have an idea for like a certain type of character dynamic, or I get inspired by like another story or game, and like how can I take a twist on that to make it work in Vision Quest? And lots of times it's also kind of, I would say for the later ads, it's really more dictated by gameplay, where I might say something along the lines of, all right, this is probably where this new character would have to show up because there's a gap here, and this is where they would be useful. Why would a character be in this spot at this time? So how do I shoehorn them into the pre-existing conditions to make it make sense? So stuff like that, I would say. Like Duck was a late ad, and Duck's now one of my favorites. And Duck is kind of like, all right, he's this dude, he's from far away, but he's kind of like a drifting mercenary, and that's why he's like in the castle at this time fighting for Groudon and kind of like building off from there. So it's kind of like interesting takes from scenario writing for some of the later ads, and just trying to find excuses to make these characters like naturally fit into the plot, so that like when you read the final product, it doesn't feel like, hey, this guy's just shoehorned in here, he doesn't make any sense to the wider narrative. It's like, okay, like I can believe that. That's kind of what I want. I hope that's helpful. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Let's see. Let's change up the tunes a bit. The Suzaku7 asks, will any of the known bugs be fixed for the final release? Not sure if it's been touched upon before, just thought I'd ask here. If not, yes. So, pretty much any of the bugs that we know about, we have fixed. So we expect there will be new bugs when the game is released, but yeah, keep them coming. But everything else like should pretty much be fixed. I can't think of anything that's come up that hasn't been fixed already. So thank you for asking. Shinkuma asks, with the seemingly almost done and all, my question is, how does it feel to have this complete? How much time do you think you spent in the project? A lot, dude. I've worked on this project like almost every day for 2 years. I've probably spent like multi-hour sessions. I don't even want to count how many hours I've spent working on Vision Quest. It's an absurd amount. It's really hard to say, but like, I would say I've probably averaged at least an hour to 2 hours every day over the course of 2 years, and that's like with like, you know, multi-month breaks, or because then there's also like days where I work like 10 hours straight in a hack on the hack. So I think it balances out. So it's a lot. So probably like at least 600 hours then if I'm doing like some quick math. 600 to 1200 hours, I would say, is the range we're talking through here. Lastly, has this project given you a different take of how FE games can be developed for making your own? Oh yeah, dude, and that's been really insightful for me. I have so much perspective on how like Fire Emblem works and like what makes Fire Emblem compelling versus boring. And that comes from just like practice designing. I've redone almost every map I've made at least once at this point, and that's a lot of maps. So like 42 maps, 41 maps. All of them have been redone at least once for the most part. So at least like 80 maps that I've built for this. So definitely given me, you know, a lot of respect for hacking, and just giving me a lot of perspective on like how to design like enjoyable Fire Emblem, and like kind of really distilling down like what are the parts of Fire Emblem that I like and designing so that I can enjoy it. Like I enjoy playing Vision Quest, which I think is like all I can really ask for. If no one wants to play it, at least I enjoy playing it. I'll just pick this up and play it whenever. It's super smooth. So I hope that answers your question there. Anonymous asks, was Vision Quest influenced at all by other ROM hacks? Let's see. Yeah. Oh, certainly. And having played through Road to Ruin recently, I realized how much I borrowed from Road to Ruin. I really like the map palettes for one, so like the new map palettes will definitely kind of look more like Road to Ruin. I mean, Storch and Vance have like a lot of parallels. Sword guys with brown hair, they have dad problems, they have a dead older brother. They're not of noble birth, so like there's definitely some parallels there that definitely in my subconscious, because that was super unintentional for them to be that similar, at least like on the surface. I think how they handle their problems are very different, but at the surface they look kind of similar. From a gameplay side, like Hollis, I totally based off of Darius from Staff of Ages, like Steelblade Armor Knight. I was like, that's cool, I want one. And so that's kind of where Hollis's design came from, at least in terms of like the gameplay design. Hokulani is like a power peg. I also kind of like ripped that off from Staff of Ages because of Lily. So that's some influence there that's come through. Other times it's been just like chapter ideas or concepts and like reworking them in my own way. I'm trying to think if there's like other specific hacks that like I've really drawn from that that kind of stand out. I mean, I've definitely learned more from playing other hacks, like playing Faith and Blood. I learned a lot about like making, because I kind of swore off route as an objective for a long time. I was kind of like, route's stupid, it's a bad one. And then I played Bloopy's route map, and I was like, actually, route could be really fun if you do these things, which he does. So that kind of helped with me designing my own route map. And then playing Souls of the Forest really like gave me a lot of perspective on like making things more fair for the player. Some different like chapter design ideas, kind of like how to scale enemies into the late game and like make later game not feel like a slog like it does in a lot of Fire Emblem. So like once you get to part 4, you'll definitely kind of see the Souls of the Forest influence creep in, because I was building part 4 as I was playing it, so the influence is like very strong on that front. I would say those are probably some of my main like ROM hack influences, kind of from like a different like meta level. Like I think each of those games is like something that I really like can draw from specifically. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but those are the first 4 that really come to mind. Random Wizard asks, why is Tangela your favorite Pokemon logo? Do you have any particular history with it? Let's see. So, Tangela I made Tangela my Discord avatar because I like the Gen 1 Pokemon art. I just think it's really funny, like the sprites. And I like the way Tangela's eyes look and just like the foot's running, like kind of just like reminds me of like the Hamburglar, just like gotta get out of here. I have no particular history with Tangela. I've always liked him as a Pokemon. I don't really have like any particular history with it. Like when I was in college, I did a Silver Nuzlocke and I had a Tangela that I used, who I really liked. But I liked him before that. No real like particular history. As I got older, like when I was a kid and I would play Pokemon, I didn't like grass types. And then as I got older, I realized that grass types were good, and they became one of my favorite types to use. Just as like I like playing with status effects and stuff like that. And so Tangela just kind of was one that I always really liked because you could do some cool stuff with it in Gen 3, with like Ingrain and Leech Seed and just like keeping it alive forever in the right conditions. And then kind of just stuck with that. Plus, like, I thought the Tangela looked good, like, in the circle, like, Discord avatar logo bit. So that's kind of why I stuck with that. No real reason otherwise. Someone, Hyphen asks, how's life? Life's interesting, man. Life's been interesting. As I'm recording this, still in, like, the midst of, like, this coronavirus crap, which has been annoying, to say the least. It's been disruptive. Thankfully, like, I'm in a good enough position where my life hasn't been impacted too heavily, at least not yet. We'll see, like, maybe it'll be different by the time this video goes live. But life is good. I don't have too many complaints. Making money, trying to eat well, losing weight, calling my family when I can, playing some Fire Emblem. Life's pretty solid. An anonymous chair asks, if you could interview any retired FE hacker, who would you pick and why? It's a big question. You have to sip on this one. I think the two I'd be most interested in speaking with are Prime Fusion, maker of Road to Ruin, because the guy just worked on it for so long, and I think he has like and it's just like impressive that he did so much of it himself. But I'd love to just like pick apart his process and just like hear what hacking was like back then, and just like get more about like his ideas and stuff. And he just seems like a chill guy from what I've heard. Blazer, creator of TLP, would be another one who I would like to interview, just because TLP is so iconic. It'd be like interviewing a celebrity. I think more interestingly, Astra, the guy who made Dream of Five, because I have such a weird relationship with Dream of Five. Like, on one hand, I love it because it's a beautiful looking game, and it's like I was super engaged by it. But there's so many like frustrating things that it does that like really grate the player, and I would just love to like understand more about the design philosophy behind that and just get a better insight into like the expectation that he had of the player going in, because there's so many things that just like don't fly today, but that seem much more commonplace then, that I'd love to get more insight into what that was like. And also just like being part of like what was at that point like really one of the biggest ROM hack teams. Like, I was not really involved in the community much during Dream of Five's development, but there were a lot of people who were working on it in a time where the project scenes were a little bit smaller. So it was pretty interesting to see that and read about that. I just would like to hear his perspective. Those would probably be the top three who I'd be interested in interviewing. But I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. Yeah, those would be like the top three. Then Tenlord, maker of Feditor, right? Like, the dude deserves a lot of credit. Let's see. I gotta look at these last two questions here. Almost 40 minutes in. Thanks if you're still watching. Zest Dynamite asks, making a hack is a lot of work, and motivation can be a fickle thing. Has your work on Vision Quest been sporadic with spikes of motivation, or has it been more constant stream of work? Do you have any tips regarding motivation for other FE hack game makers? I like this question. So, when I started Vision Quest, I worked on it pretty consistently, and then I released my first demo, and I made a few tweaks to it, and then I took like a 3-month break from it. I kind of like burnt myself out a bit at that. Like, I wasn't really happy with where it was at that point. And like, I was getting a lot of feedback and like I saw people on Discord were like making fun of it and saying like my maps were bad and this and that, and like just like the art was ugly. Like I was getting a lot of feedback that like wasn't really considering just how early in dev the project was, and it was a little discouraging, and I kind of felt like on my own in a lot of ways. When you're starting out, like it could certainly feel like really daunting, like I'll never get there. I took a bit of a break from it. I was like working on some other things, just like outside of ROM hacking. And then Runa made a post in the Vision Quest thread like, hey, are you submitting this to FEE3? And I was like, you know what, I should do that. And then I did that, and I recorded my first video, and that was actually like a really big moment for me because I realized how much I enjoyed LPing, and I wouldn't be here like recording this video right now if I didn't, you know, kind of get that nudge to submit for FEE3. So that was pretty cool. Since then, dude, I've pretty consistently worked on it. I've only taken like breaks if I'm going on like vacation or visiting family and don't have like regular access to my computer. But since then, I've been working on it pretty steadily. Any tips regarding motivation? I think the biggest thing for me, man, is like you have to really want it. And for me, like, I'm very motivated by proving people wrong. And I feel like everyone assumes that ROM hackers aren't going to finish their projects, especially if they're at all ambitious. They're like, oh, it'll never finish, I'm not going to care. I kind of want to be like, you know, fuck you. Like, I'm going to finish this ROM hack. And I've kind of been like that for a while now, where I'm like, I'm going to finish this thing, and it's going to be dope. I'm going to make, and like, what keeps me going is like, I know that I can make something that I think will be really good. At this point, I've built a lot of confidence in my ROM hacking and in my design. And I've gotten a lot of support from some really great folks who came along for the ride. And part of it's like, I want to complete it for them. Like, I want to complete it for the team who's put so much work into this. I would hate to see their efforts go to waste. So I kind of do it for them too. But I also, like, you have to really want it. Like, I'm going to be so excited when this game is finished. And, like, I would love to see someone, like, you know, a more prominent YouTuber LP it, because that would be really cool. It's like if an artist, like, plays a song you wrote, you know, it's really cool. So, like, I've always been motivated really for myself, to prove to myself that I could do this and that I could make something. It's been something I've thought about for a long time, even before I started. The biggest thing is just wanting to do it. I think the other thing is just like planning. And I'm going to make a video at some point about like how you should approach building your ROM hack and like what you can do to make sure that you go about things the right way. Because for a lot of people doing this, they're going to be their first time and they're going to be on their own. And it's easy to kind of like go down the wrong path and like have to backtrack, which can be really annoying. But I think for me, like, it was easier for me to stay motivated because I really enjoyed the process of doing it. And it kind of became like my second job for a long time. And it still is. I hope that's kind of helpful. Feel free to follow up if there's anything else that I can provide. And then Anon asks, how are you able to get so many custom assets for free without seemingly doing a majority of them for yourself? Or if you paid for them, was the cost very high? So actually, I didn't pay for anything. Everything has been done by volunteers. There's been edits of free-to-use stuff. And as far as like how, part of it was like, people liked the hack and they wanted to support. You know, at the beginning, I remember going around and asking people to help out. And there were some people who liked the project and liked the ideas for some of the characters and wanted to see them come to life. Like, I very distinctly remember reaching out to Laurent Lacroix, who's done like the majority of the project's work. And because I remember here, because like Loopy had told me that he helped him with stuff. And I reached out to him, and then he looked at my spreadsheet with all the characters at the time and all of their descriptions. And I remember he like whipped up one for Onisim, who's like the buff priest who was formerly a power. And he's like, I loved that concept. Like, I just like wanted to make it. And, you know, part of it, I think for me was like, from what I've seen from other hackers that have struggled for this, part of it's like your reputation. And like, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about finishing your hack. Like, if you're committed to finishing your hack, other people will like be drawn to help you finish your hack. If they don't think you're committed, they're probably not going to want to waste their time. I think that's a big part of it. I think another part of it's also like being easy to work with and not being like super stringent in your vision. Like, there's a lot of characters in Vision Quest that were definitely shaped by the dev team and like the artists and other folks who have come on to help out, mostly with art and playtesting. Those have been like the two major areas I've needed support. And then there's some folks who help with like some technical things as I need them. But I've done like all the maps and the eventing myself, predominantly barring like anything custom that I need support with. But getting those folks to help out, it was really just like, it took time, and like it definitely built momentum. Like, you know, you get, you know, and I gave them concepts to work with. I gave very detailed descriptions of what I wanted. I also like let them get creative, and I was like, look, I want this to be fun for you. I don't want this to feel like a job. You know, I'm not gonna ask, like, if I pay someone, it's like you have to do exactly what I want. And for me, I think it's more fun to let the artist do what they want, and I just kind of give them a rough idea of like, hey, like, here's a guy with an eye patch who's bald wearing purple armor. Show me what you can do. And I've always just like blown away at like the way that the artists like Laurent and Melia and Zan and Levin, all of them have done like such an excellent job. Card and Zane as well. A lot of people who have contributed. And part of it was like they saw the project had potential. They wanted to help it look better, and they wanted to jump on board. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't put myself out there and be willing to show the project in a state where it didn't look good. And I also like made a lot of like really rough concepts for them to kind of get an idea from, which I think helped a lot. And you could see like there's definitely a lot of influence from those rough concepts in the finished ones. So it was really just like being a good communicator and a team player and letting them take ownership. There's a lot of stuff that's like we have a new character who's going to be in the final release. It's a bald woman. And now it's kind of just like starting from like a joke in the dev chat. It's like, well, we need a bald lady. And I was like, go for it. Like, if you guys want to make one, like, we could find a way to make it work. And like stuff like that, I think just helps with like keeping people involved and invested. And I would think if you talked to any of the people who are like involved in Vision Quest, like Laurent and Eleven and Skryza and whomever, I think all of them like definitely feel a certain sense of ownership in the project at this point. Like, I started by myself, but I finished with like a really strong team who's really helped pave the way. And a big part of it has been like just letting them get involved. You know, when people like stuff, they want to be involved. And if you're going to be a hack creator and you're not going to let your team have any sort of creative control beyond like, build my assets, no, do exactly as I say, they're not going to want to help you. This is supposed to be fun. So maybe it's not exactly what you envisioned up front and it strays from that initial vision, but sometimes you get something better out of that. And I certainly feel like I have. And I think that's helped a lot for me with life, but also just like with making this project and helping getting it to a place where everything looks really beautiful. Because I'm amazed at how nice it looks now. It's incredible. But I've also like done a lot for others too. Like the YouTube stuff I've done has largely been to help playtest other people's work and showcase it and build awareness around it. And I think people have really appreciated that. And so there's definitely like a bit of like a bartering system that goes on in the Fire Emblem community, where it's like, hey, I'll help you with this if you help me with that. And like, I'm more than happy to playtest people's hacks, to give them feedback and help them design to make it better, because I enjoy doing it, but also it's something I can offer because I know that they'll find a way to support me down the road. And I love the collaborative nature of the community and how we're all working together. I hope that's helpful. But that's all the questions, and my voice is gone. It's been almost an hour. We'll find something more triumphant to close out with. Well, guys, thank you again for joining me for Q&A. This has been fun. I'll probably do another Q&A for FEE 3 when it comes out. But I was in the mood to do something different. Thank you again to everyone who submitted questions. These were super fun to answer. And I'll see you again next time. And I'll just kind of let this play out. Jared did such a nice job with this track. Jared's been super great with music. So yeah, that was fun, guys. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.